Today on Inside the Issues, I speak with Tamara Troyakova on the Russian Far East. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Issues, a CIGI online podcast. I'm David Welch, the CIGI Chair of Global Security in the Balsley School of International Affairs and Professor of Political Science at the University of Waterloo, and I'm very pleased every week to welcome a guest into the studios here at the Center for International Governance Innovation to speak about some pressing, important issue in global governance, international public policy, international affairs. And today I'm very happy to welcome Tamara Troyakova, who's professor in the School of International and Regional Studies in the Far Eastern Federal University in Vladivostok, and also the head of the Department of International Relations there. So welcome, Tamara. Thank you for coming a long way from Vladivostok and joining us here today.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us don't know much about the Russian Far East, and I certainly don't know much about the Far Eastern Federal University. So maybe you can start by telling us a bit about your university and the region in which it's located.
Okay. Our university is the #1 university in the whole region. You know, it's because Vladivostok is the south part of the Russian Far East. And if you look at the Russian Far East, it's 1/3 of the Russian territory. And actually, you know, if you looked at the Vladivostok, it's the south part of the Russian Far East. And we have several universities, but just recently, because of the special policy, you know, we got the status of the Far Eastern Federal University and some kind of combination of different universities, so like a technical university and commercial university, and just now we have the huge university. It's on the federal level. And if you look to the Russian federal, I don't know, it's like a structure. The Russian Far East, it's 1/3 of the territory, but if you look the population, it's only about 4 or 5% of the Russian population.
Very small.
Yeah, it's very small, but why it was located in the Vladivostok? Because Vladivostok, it's not real north. It's some kind of south part of the Russian Far East. And what is important, this location, it's very important for everybody. I think it's for university also, because we have close neighbors as China, South Korea, and North Korea, of course, and Japan. Mm-hmm. And it's a good opportunity to communicate with our close neighbors and to be such kind of, you know, it's an international maybe institute in this area. And I think it's the good opportunity for integration and a good opportunity to be to attract more foreign students to our university, and we have several programs for international students also, mainly from China, but just recently our school, you know, it's began a master program for foreigners, and we have students from South Korea, and we have students from Japan, and also maybe from Vietnam, you know, it's in. We are ready for for students from Canada also. I think it's from
very possibly soon.
Yeah.
Vladivostok's also the most important port city in the Russian Far East.
That's
so it's
right.
the most regionally and globally connected.
Because the Vladivostok, it's not only university city, but I think it's at first it's a port city. Mm-hmm. And I like this idea about the port city. You know, it's a port city in the world. They have some kind of similarities. You know, it's windy, and it's some kind of mixture of different people. And I think it's during the Soviet times, it was really, you know, it's a good opportunity for the local people, for Soviet people, to go abroad as a sailors, as a fishermen, and just try, you know, it's to compare what is life is in our country, in Soviet Union, and abroad, you know. It's
right. Now you said that Russian Far East is 1/3 of the country, and
yeah.
physically 4 to 5% of the population. Mm-hmm. What proportion of the population is actually ethnically Russian, as opposed to something?
95.
95%.
Yeah.
And the remainder are various primarily indigenous communities?
Indigenous people, and actually, if you look to the maritime territory, because Vladivostok is the capital of maritime territory, and if you look to the Russian Far East, it's a Magadan territory, and it's a Khabarovsk territory, and Sakhalin, and Kamchatka also. But maritime territory is the most populated. It's about the population, it's about 2 million people. And because of South. And if you look to the history, it's how it was a maritime territory was founded, and it was actually it was a part of China, and it was many years ago. It was Beijing Treaty, 1860, and because of this treaty, Russia got this piece of land. It's maritime territory, and it was really good because Vladivostok, the only free ice port in the whole region, and I think it's very important for us. Right. But during the Soviet period, it was just far post, and just now, if you look to the translation, it's some kind of just a little artificial name, it's a Vladivostok to rule the East. It sounds just a little, it's a political, but in general it was real, it's.
And how much autonomy does the Russian Far East have from Moscow, and what issue areas would it have autonomy over?
During the Soviet time, it was not real autonomy. But during the last 20 years, it was some kind of shift. At the beginning of 90s, it was some kind of freedom. Why it was freedom? Because we were remote territory, and the federal government, they have no resources, they have no maybe time to rule the situation. And the local people, they were, maybe they got more freedom to go abroad. I think it was really important because during the economic crisis, it was lines, it was ration cards for food, and also, on the other hand, the local population got a chance to go abroad to China. Non-visa agreement. You have to organize some kind of group of people, it's a 5 or 10, and you can go to China to buy some consumer goods. And if you have some kind of entrepreneurial, it's abilities, you can buy more and to sell to in the market. And it was a special move in shuttle traders. And it was really good for us in the 90s. But just now, I think it's we have more structure area, and we have no real, maybe, opportunity to be independent.
Well, we'll talk about that again in a moment when we come back. You're watching or listening to Inside the Issues, a CIGI Online podcast. Look for us at cgionline.org, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. Welcome back. So immediately after the collapse of the Soviet Union, you said the region had quite a lot of independence and autonomy. Was that also true of the government? The government is in Khabarovsk, and the governor was a relatively independent actor regionally, or not?
It's not like because if you look at the Russian Far East, it's a composition of different territories, and Khabarovsk, it's not. Maybe, there is a competition between Khabarovsk and Vladivostok. Khabarovsk, it's a typical Russian provincial city with, it's a traditional history. And but Vladivostok, because of the port city, and we have maritime territory, and there is a competition between Khabarovsk territory and Vladivostok territory. But if you look to the structure, it's every territory has own right, but in general, if you look to the whole region, the northern part, they have nothing. But if you look to the south part, Vladivostok and Khabarovsk, they have more opportunities because Khabarovsk, they have a good, it's economic relation with China also. And also we can look to the further, to China, it's Amur Oblast. They have also good relationship with China. and the border region, they have some kind of privilege. If you look to the north, to the far north, to Magadan and Chukotka, they have some kind of geographical privilege to do something, to cooperate with Alaska. And at the beginning of 90s, it was really good, it's for local people in Chukotka, the Aboriginal people, they can go to American Nome and to maybe for a birthday party, and for some kind of, because they are relatives. And
right,
yeah.
of course, yeah. Now, the Russian Far East is Russia's footprint in the Asia-Pacific, which is the world's most dynamic, most exciting, and some would say most dangerous region. And yet, of course, Moscow is a very long way away.
Yeah, that's right. It's about
so
10
how
hours
does this
flight.
work in terms of Russian foreign policy and the role that Russia can play in the Asia-Pacific when the Russian Far East is so small in terms of population, and
that's right. Yeah.
the central authorities are so far removed. How do you see Russia's role now in the Asia-Pacific today?
Oh, because if you look to the world situation, it's and Asia-Pacific region, it's maybe just now the most developed area, and if you look to the economic development, everybody would like to do something in this region, in the Asia-Pacific region. If you look to the history of the Russian foreign policy, I think it's the beginning of such kind of pivot or turning or twisting. It was the, I think it's in 80s with Mikhail Gorbachev perestroika. And it was a very well-known speech by Gorbachev in July 1986. And it was some kind of a reality. Because if you look to the Russian Far East, we have no chance to do something with European part of country, and we have to be more self-sufficient, and it was the beginning of the Russian foreign policy. Why it was the new thinking. It was Gorbachev, it's words about new thinking about Russia in the Asia-Pacific region. And during the last 20 years, it was several plans to develop this area, to cooperate and to do some kind of economic and maybe humanitarian, maybe some kind of projects. And our university is a part of this project, it's something about human security, because migration, it's a very important point for the Russian Far East, because at the beginning of 90s, it was some kind of Chinese threat. Too many, it was some kind of political slogan about million of Chinese, it's to conquer the Russian Far East because they have no room in China, it's too many Chinese, and they will go and they will conquer the Russian Far East. And this slogan, it's still popular, it's between politicians. They would like to defend the motherland from Chinese threat. And I think it's a real, it's a funny, because in politicians, they would like to use conspiracy theory.
Right,
I think it's a real good for a politician to be a populist. And if you remember, it was at the beginning of 90s, it was a border issue with China, how to settle this border issue. And the governor, Evgeny Nazartenko, he was very well known for his patriotism. It's no piece of motherland to China. But this issue was settled very successfully in the beginning of this century.
And does Russia now understand its main interests in the Asia-Pacific as economic in nature?
At first, yes. I think it's economic, because it's a natural way to communicate with neighbors. If you look at the political situation, I think it's the last year, September 2012, it was APEC meeting, and it was some kind of symbolic, not only for the Russian Far East, I think it's for Russia also, because President Putin, he was very proud to go to Vladivostok and to talk about the Russian Far East and the Russia in the Asia-Pacific region, and it was really good. But I'm very skeptical about such kind of, it's a rhetoric about Russia in the Asia-Pacific, because it takes time. And just now, if you look to the whole, it's last 20 years, too many declaration, intentions, but implementations, not really, it's implementations. If you look to our relationship with Japan, because the main, it's a problem, or the main obstacle to develop economic relationship with Japan, I think, is a territorial issue about Kuril Islands, Southern Kuril Islands, or South Kuril Islands. And because if you look to the history, Vladivostok, it was some kind of cosmopolitan city, because it was Chinese population, Japanese, and Russian Korean also.
Very good. I'd like to speak more about that when we come back. If you're watching or listening to Inside the Issues, the CIGI Online podcast, look for us at cgionline.org, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. Welcome back. So we were talking about territorial issues, and of course, one of the big issues in the Asia-Pacific now is territory. It's one of the few places on the world that has active and hot territorial disputes that could plausibly spill over into escalate into large-scale war between nuclear-armed countries. Now, the dispute you just mentioned, the Southern Kurils, what the Japanese call Northern Territories issue, that's a long-standing issue dating all the way back to 1945. It's not one of the issues that's on the front pages of the newspapers today. So 2 questions for you. One, what do you anticipate happening with respect to Japan specifically on the Southern Kurils, Northern Territories issue? And secondly, what's Russia's position, attitude with respect to the other main disputes at the moment, Senkaku Diaoyu Islands, South China Sea disputes, maybe to a lesser extent the Korean-Japanese dispute over Dokdo Takeshima?
Just now, if you look to the concepts of the Russian foreign policy, we have no real interest, it's not real primary interest, it's to do something with territorial issues. And if you look to all these territorial dispute, I think it's the most important for Russia, it's Kuril Islands. And if you look to the 90s, and it was some kind of real good chance to settle this issue, because Boris Yeltsin policy was just to have a good, relationship with Japan, and it will be maybe 1956 declaration just to divide, it's 2 islands to Russia, 2 islands to Japan, and maybe would be beginning of the process. But unfortunately, at the beginning of 90s, it was too many policy rhetoric. And just now, it was some kind of, if you look to the whole story, it was some kind of ups and downs with Kuril Islands. But the reality is really quite different. Because if you go to the South Kurils, it was bad infrastructure, no real ports, no real pier, and how many people, can live in Kuril Islands. It's some kind of seasonal fishing industry, and that's it. And I visited Kuril Islands because of my curiosity, of course, and it was really, it was my personal opinion, and I'm still, it's good in. I think it's better, to give these islands to Japan, because it will be more useful, not only for local people from Hokkaido or from Kuril Islands. I think it will be good for the whole region, and would be some kind of good example how to solve these territorial issues.
So when you say give the islands to Japan, you mean the Two of the four, or all four?
Maybe two for the beginning,
Right.
because if you look to Habamai, it's not real, it's
Some rocks, yeah.
yeah, it's a rocks, it's some kind of symbolic rocks, and it's difficult to find the permanent population. Because the permanent population is all Europeans, and they would like to go just to make money. They have a good salary just to spend 2 or 3 years, and then came back to Ukraine or to European part of country. And I think it will be good. But if you look to all these arguments by politicians, it's something about 200-mile zone. It's about fishery. But look to the reality with fishery. It's in Vladivostok we have no real fish market. Why? It's with crab and some kind of seafood products, because it's more profitable to sell to Japan. And it's the government, actually, they have no control. It's for fishing. Because yes, at the beginning it was some kind of Chinese fishermen, it's just catch fish in near Kuril Islands, but just now they have monopoly, it's the Russian fishermen, businessmen, they have monopoly. And the previous governor of Vladivostok, of maritime territory, he began his politician career as a fisherman. And just to sell all this seafood to Japan.
Right, but it would be, I guess, an economic blow if Japan were catching those crabs and so on, instead of Russian crab fishermen.
But just now, it's not profitable for Russia,
I see.
For the local population, because we have no chance to, to eat sushi, with fish, it's because we have, if you look to the price, it's of some kind of caviar or crab, you can go to Moscow and you can buy, 1 kilogram. Let's imagine 1 kilogram of crabs for the same price in Vladivostok. Could you imagine the difference for the local people? Right. And local people in Vladivostok, they try to remember it was 50 years ago, it was crabs, and it was nothing. And the kilogram of meat was just 10 rubles, and crab you can buy for 3 rubles. And it was real, it's a good situation, but just now you have no real fresh seafood in Vladivostok.
And Russia's been quite quiet on the other territorial disputes in the Far East. And is that because it doesn't particularly want to draw attention to the dispute with Japan, or it doesn't actually see itself as having a role in those?
Maybe Russia has no Russia is not maybe the major player in these issues. And maybe, I don't know, because if you look to the Russian, it's a priorities, maybe China is the number one. It's our partner, it's a strategic partnership, no doubts, and that is the reason that China maybe has some kind of priorities.
Very good. We'll be back one last time with Tamara Troyakova. You're watching or listening to Inside the Issues, a CIGI online podcast. Look for us at cgionline.org, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. Welcome back. So what about the future? The Russian Far East, I remember, has always been seen as an area of great promise and opportunity and potential, a bit like Canada's north. And I think people are traditionally disappointed by the reality lagging behind the expectations. Is there still that sense that the Russian Far East is an area of enormous potential? Do you think that's realistic? If so, and how do you see the region developing, and as a result, the region's role in the Asia-Pacific developing?
I would like to be very optimistic about the future, and the near future and the distant future for this region. Maybe I doubt something about the near future, but the distant future, I think it's some kind of natural way for the Russian Far East to develop, to integrate as the Asia-Pacific region because of the location. And if you look to the federal government, it's a plan. Just now we have special ministry. It's the Ministry of Development of the Russian Far East. And we have to change some kind of attitude. You know, it's a traditional attitude. If you look to the Russian Far East, it's a resource base. You know, it's timber, fish, and some kind of gold and diamonds from Yakutia also. But maybe because we have some kind of different time. I like this idea about globalization, and maybe globalization it's good for the Russian Far East. Maybe why? Because we need some kind of more technology. We need some kind of investment to develop this area. And if you look to the Russian government policy, they would like, you know, to invest more money, and maybe Vladivostok is the number one because it was some kind of huge amount of money to develop this area. And of course, Vladivostok. Vladivostok is a symbol. And now it's like a symbolic speech by Gorbachev, and just now maybe a symbolic event, APEC summit in 2012, and just now maybe the beginning of good, you know, it's a future for this region. And we have some kind of several projects, and I think it's one of the projects. It's maybe just, it's not real, maybe it's an academic project. Still, Russia is a mediator between Northeast Asian countries and Arctic countries. And I think it's a real good, you know, it's an opportunity for Russia, specifically for the Russian Far East, to attract more investment. For example, from South Korea with shipping industry, we need maybe new icebreaker with nuclear power, and we need maybe more good ships, and also we need some kind of construction of port infrastructure, and maybe we can use Chinese investment and Chinese labor also, because it's a very important problem with shortage of labor. It's not like you know, it's a labor in general, but maybe we need some kind of high technology, you know, it's workers to work for development of our area. Because just now, if you look to the foreign labor, we have Chinese workers, North Korean workers, and just now, just recently, it's a new some kind of trend. We have more labor from Central Asian republics.
You know, during the Soviet era, the Far East was pretty isolated, and in fact, Vladivostok was a closed city. It was the main naval base. What's it like now? Are there foreign businessmen coming in, foreign governments beginning to be well represented in the city and in the region? Are we beginning to see the integration of the Far East?
Because if you go to Khabarovsk, you know, so you can find some kind of consulate, foreign consulate also. But if you go to Vladivostok, we have more consulates. You know, it's American consulate, Japanese, South Korean, Vietnamese, and North Korean also. And if you look to some kind of companies, you know, we have American and we have Canadian also, but it's not really a consulate, but it's some kind of businessmen, you know, they are doing pretty good. And I think what was really important for Vladivostok, it's some kind of history background. It's a cosmopolitan city. And I think Vladivostok has more potential, you know, to develop a relationship with foreign countries and with America also, you know, because at the beginning of 90s it was direct flight, Alaska Airlines from Anchorage to Vladivostok, and just now maybe they have a plan, you know, but just now we can go from Vladivostok to abroad via Seoul. Yeah, but because of all these plans, you know, we have just new constructed big airport, Vladivostok. It's an international airport for Vladivostok, and maybe some, you know, it's a companies, they will use Vladivostok as to go to Alaska or to go to the Southeast Asian countries also. And I think it's a port facilities also, it's important. It's not only for Vladivostok, because at the beginning of 90s it was a big international project, a two-man project. It's some kind of triangle with China, in North Korea, in Russia, and Japan. And it was some kind of expectation, but reality is just really bad. But I'm very optimistic. Let's wait and see, and maybe it will be better.
And will there be a meeting of minds between the local government and Moscow, or are there important differences in the understanding of the interests in regional engagement?
I think just now, if you look at the Russian policy, it's some kind of interior policy, it's a foreign policy. And for Russia just now, it's a time for isolation. Why it's isolation? Because the economic situation is not very good. And I would like to see that we have some kind of struggle inside of Russian elites. And maybe it's a time, it's just to wait. But also, it's an opportunity for local regional elite to be more independent. Maybe it will be good for businessmen, they have money, they have some kind of ability to be more independent. And if you look to the rhetoric, it's by our current president Putin, I think it's the good example is something for Vladivostok. I think for the whole region, something about used Japanese cars. It was the beginning of our development, and it was really fruitful cooperation. Every local family has 1 or 2 Japanese cars, and it's good. But the federal government, they decided no way.
So interesting. Well, it'll be fascinating to watch the development of the region. Always certainly has a lot of enormous potential in terms of natural resources, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for Russia to play a constructive role in the Asia-Pacific. So we hope to have you back to reflect in a few years about how it's been progressing, and thank you for coming in and helping us understand the Russian Far East better. Thank you to the audience for joining us, and join us again next week for another episode of Inside the Issues, a CIGI Online podcast. Look for us at cgonline.org, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube.